in a huddle. Now they know we can fight. Content given every week. Me and Dr. Rim Shop. Keep on bringing the heat. Now they know that we hit. And they know we ain't quitting. Yo, she mind the jig. Keep on bringing it giving. Unity, unity, unity. Cause they know we ain't stopping. And they know they got problems. And they ran out of options. But we know we got a problem. Can't let it go unsolved. Brain race learning, Afrocentric history, we see tomorrow. Karma is karma, I see what I say, I hear the wall. Till I see y'all fall off, then I bring y'all up on note. I'm back up on my climb winners, 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 divine winners, climb winners, climb winners, climb winners, I'm with you, ride with you. Max attention, create magic, fly winners. Give respect to the elders, fly winners. Somebody out there in the beat. Somebody out there in the beat. Somebody out there in the
Dr. Winters has illustrated that Africans have been settling the New World and building new civilizations and cultures in the Americas and around the world for the past 100,000 years. Dr. Winters has published and written numerous
What up, though? What up, though? I'm very happy to see a lot of people here. You know, it's great. And I'm very happy to be talking to you, Joanne Biddle. She says something that is that's very interesting. Joanne, she says, because it's about ethnic cleansing of you and I, yet our people walk around like they don't know what time it is. It's horribly sad. You know, you've got something there, Joanne, because see, when you really look at this, what's going on in that movie, you know, everybody keeps saying, "Look at the movie, check out the movie." This movie is the best thing, and a lot of people, in a sense, they don't really know that this movie is talking a lot about our history. Yes, yes. On the surface, it appears that on the surface, it appears in a sense that everything is hunky-dory, but it's not. This is very deep. How you doing, TT Summer? Joan Caramonte, how you doing? Akil, what up, though? You know, I love seeing all of you guys here, but tonight what I want to do is I want to get into this. I've been looking at Instagram. I've been looking at, in a sense, Facebook. Everywhere you go, people are saying, look at Leave the World Behind. Look at Leave the World Behind. You see, people are talking about this. How you doing, Mark by Smith? You know, it's very interesting because, see, I said to myself, why are people telling other people to look at the film? I looked at the film and it was good. But at the same time, I started looking at the film seriously. Sure, it's a psychological thriller. It's kind of scary. A lot of people, especially black people, they're very afraid of the movie. And I think they're afraid of the movie because they're saying, how do I fit in? What's going to happen to me? The movie is deep because the movie touches on so many issues that we don't like to talk about in public. They dealt with that whole issue of race and class, you know. It dealt with the issue of xenophobia. Why are we afraid of each other? Why is it that we fear being able to communicate? Why is it that we don't really, in a sense, want to understand who and what we are? It also, in a sense, pointed out the flaws in our culture. Yes, it pointed out the flaws in our culture. It pointed out to us that much of what we're doing today, we're basing our whole existence. Yes, our whole existence. We're basing it on the internet. We're basing it on, in a sense, you know, electronic means. Let me explain to you. Do you know if someone touched off a magnetic bomb, especially like a hydrogen bomb, it affects the magnetic field? Do you know that hydrogen bomb, what it would do is that it would knock out all of the batteries in the cars. It would knock out all the electricity. It would knock out everything, you see? And I think that the reason that many people found Leave the World Behind, found this to be a very scary movie, is because the fact is that it showed us how we live on a very tenuous strand, how we're almost near a crevice about to fall over into the river or into the lake. We're so close, in a sense, to losing everything because our whole civilization, everything that makes us who and what we are, is dependent upon electronic means. When people stop, you see them on the telephone, you see, and then Leave the World Behind. We find it when the telephone is knocked out, when TV is knocked out, and it was quiet. That it was this quiet that caused the most fear among these people, you see. But I'm not going to spend most of my time talking. I'm going to get straight to the point, and we're going to, in a sense, we're going to discuss this whole idea of why and how Leave the World Behind is really talking about Black people. You know, as I was thinking, and as I told you, I looked at Twitter, I looked at all these different things, and I said, why? Why is the interest in Leave the World Behind? Why are Foundation of Black Americans so interested in this movie? You know, you shouldn't be really interested in the movie because it's basically supposed to be about the Sanford family and how they go on this vacation and what happens. But we also, in a sense, find that there's this interjection, you see, of race and culture, you see. This is a very interesting film. I want you to go to my Patreon to see the slides. After this presentation, I'm going to put the slides in my Patreon. My patrons, they support me. They're the ones who provide me with the support to be able to get the articles and other materials to do this research. It costs money to do this research. You see, a lot of the articles and books are behind paywalls. Yes, paywalls, even the newspapers. A lot of good articles, if you want to get the articles from the newspaper, you have to pay money. So therefore, in a sense, my patrons, they help me out with that. You can go to Twitter at Dr. Clyde Winters 8. And also follow me on TikTok.com at Clyde Winters 3. You know, a lot of people, I noticed a lot of people have established a lot of shorts about my research and some of my activities on TikTok. And I was really surprised because last time I looked, they had 588,000 views. Wow, people are interested. What I'd like you guys to do, go to TikTok, look at them, Push it up to 1 million. I'd like to see 1 million views, just to know that people are out there looking, people out there learning. That's very important. Thank you for coming to my YouTube channel to see this live. On this YouTube channel that you're on right now, I have over 200, almost 300 videos on all aspects of Black history. Press that like button. Press that like button. You see? And subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. You can order my books at Amazon.com. FBA is not a group. FBA is not an organization. FBA is a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestry or pedigree. As a result, we are descendants of the African and Aboriginal Blacks who built the United States. Yes, yes. In Pathfinder, I explained how I became an Afrocentric researcher. If you want to learn how I became an Afrocentric researcher, buy this book, Pathfinder. This is my memoir. In it, I talk about how when I was 10 years old, I decided that I was going to explore all aspects of history. And I decided at 10 years old that I was going to be the first to discover various aspects of Black history, and that before you heard about anything, you was going to hear from me first. And this is one of the things I'm doing tonight. Tonight, I'm going to explain to you how Leave the World Behind is basically about Black history, about racism, you see? Sadly, about white supremacy. And what's even more sad is that it deals with this whole idea of CAIDS. CAIDS is culturally acquired immune identity deficiency syndrome. Many people suffer from CAIDS, you see. I originally, in a sense, had just used immune, but Joan Coromonte, thank you, Joan, she pointed out to me that when Black people, in a sense, are suffering from CAIDS, they not only lose, in a sense, their immunity to whiteness, they lose their identity. And they began to really feel that they're white. And that's sad. That is very sad, you see. But see, we have to fight CAIDS, culturally acquired immune identity deficiency syndrome. And the only way we can fight it is Black history. Get that book, Pathfinder, Find Out How I Became Who I Am. Why the Interest in Leave the World Behind by Foundational Black Americans. This book was written by Rumen Alam. And many other things in the video. There are going to be some spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie yet, don't look at this video because I'm going to touch on some spoilers. So if you haven't seen Leave the World Behind, just look at the movie, then come back to the video because there will be some spoilers. Leave the World Behind was written by Rumen Alam. Some of the scenes that they put into the movie are not in the book. For example, when they have all the Teslas on the highway, that wasn't in the book. And there was a couple other things that wasn't in the book, you see. But I guess they wanted to add more, make it more dramatic, make it more engrossing, make people want to really look at it. But let's look at it. Leave the World Behind. It's a family vacation on Long Island is interrupted by two strangers bearing news of a blackout. The internet and phone services are out, and they cannot find out information on what is going on in the nation and the world. As the threat grows, both families must decide how best to survive the potential crisis, all while grappling with their own prejudices and place in a world that appears to be ending. This is very important, you see. And that's why when we look at this, let's look at this cover for the film Leave the World Behind. We see in a sense this deer, but we also see a lot of greenish. And this green and this deer, they represent this whole idea of the European. The European is in a constant battle with nature. The European is always trying to fight nature because he's trying to fight God, because God is the representative of nature. So we have the the Clay and Amanda Sanford. They want to go into the country over the weekend with their kids. So what they do is that they leave their apartment in New York and they want to, they want to stay in the suburbs over the weekend, but they don't want to stay in a hotel. They want to rent out in a home of some rich person so they can, live the life and really enjoy themselves. So they get in their car and they head on out to the suburbs. The parents, Clay and Amanda, they want to take their son and daughter out so they can get a little nature, get a little, fresh air. You see, But see, in a way, the movement of this family from this apartment to this house, because see, the story is into several different parts, the house, curve, things like that. But the first part of the first part, in a sense, of the story is the house. You see, and remember, we got these white people. They're moving from an apartment in the city so they can live in a beautiful, fine house in the country. Now let's look at what is this, because see, this movement of this family from the apartment to the big house is in a way, it is the fantasy of white superiority and fake status. The Sanfords live in the city. They rent a home in the country. This represents the old TV show, The Fantasy of the Jeffersons. Remember the Jeffersons? You know, and the Jeffersons is a story in which a black family moves from the ghetto into a deluxe apartment in downtown New York City. The theme song for the Jeffersons was Moving On Up. There was another black sitcom back in the day called Sanford and Son, in which we have a father and son trying to earn a living based on their small business, which was a junkyard. Okay, junk dealer Fred Sanford runs roughshod over his son and partner, Lamont. In a groundbreaking sitcom, Fred's money-making scheme routinely backfires, and he does just about anything to get out of working, up to and including faking a heart attack. He's rude, sarcastic, outspoken, overly prejudiced, and pretty darn nasty to his friends and family. Now, this is Sanford. And remember, the name of this white family is what? Sanford. Do you see that juxtaposition? This suggests that the Sanfords represent the idea that whites like to feel supreme. But in many cases, they are faking their success. It also reflects the racism shown by Amanda when she didn't want to accept the fact that the beautiful home was owned by, in a sense, a Black American, a foundational Black American. See, we see this position. Sanford and Son. We see, in a sense, the movement from the apartment in New York to the countryside, the big house, moving on up. Do you see it? Look at it. It's kind of subtle, but in a way, you see this whole idea of trying to show you that whites want to feel superior, but usually it's a fake status. You know, when they come back, we find, in a sense, that the people who own the house, they decide that they're going to go back home. You see, here we see the Sanfords, Amanda and Clay, and we also see the Black couple. You know, we see George and his daughter Ruth. You see, very interesting. You see, we find this contrast. Look at this picture. This is a contrast. We find, in a sense, the Black couple, you know, the brother in his tuxedo, and then, you know, the white people in just their regular clothes. You see, you know, what is it? What does it show? The theme is a change among and within the Scott and Sanford families. We see George, a GH, he's an investment banker. He knows, in a sense, how to help people make money through investment. He's guarded, his character is guarded, but also thoughtful. Ruth, on the other hand, she's xenophobic. She doesn't trust white people. She don't want to be around white people. And she feels, in a sense, that white people are dangerous. Then we have Clay. Clay represents the liberal white person. He represents the liberal, and in his case, the liberal is supposed to not know anything or understand anything. And then we have Amanda. And Amanda represents the racist white person, the xenophobic, you know, afraid of other people, but at the same time, in a sense, definitely knows that she's superior to Black people. But we have to look at this from the perspective is that the basic idea of leave the world behind is that, you know, there's change coming, and there's going to be change among these family members, you see. Amanda was very racist. When she meets the Scotts, she assumed that they may be the maid and handyman of the owners of the house. It would appear that she cannot imagine a Black man having such wealth and a beautiful home. Okay, look at this picture up here. This picture is very evident, and a lot of times what makes, you know, Leave the World Behind so interesting and engrossing is the fact, in a sense, that a lot of times they just have pictures where you're looking at them, you know, you're looking at the characters, and it makes you feel that you're there, but you're kind of sneaking in. But look at this picture. In this picture, we have, in a sense, the you know, the Sanfords. They're about to go to bed. Look at how that picture on the left-hand side, it's light, you see. In other words, in a sense, they're representing the light. But we look at in a sense the Scots, George and Ruth. What do we see? It's dark. So you see, they juxtaposition that light and darkness. That whole idea, in a sense, is that, remember, white people are light. You know, white people are supreme. White people can help you find the truth. Very important in understanding what Leave the World Behind is trying to tell us. George is rich. He has made his money through skillful navigation of the business world. He makes money by helping Europeans, whites, make money. He shows them how to invest their money. In reality, he represents the fact, now listen to this. In reality, George represents the fact that although a black person can become rich, he remains as an indentured servant to whites. Very important. Because his wealth is dependent on the largesse of the Europeans. Sure, he's earned the money, but the money earned was dependent on the benevolence of whites who contracted his services. Let's look at many of these so-called black billionaires. Many of these so-called black billionaires, they don't really own any companies, you know, like Oprah, you see. They don't own any companies, and much of their wealth comes from the fact that white people send them a check and that they make money by working with white people, just like George, you see. So George, even though George represents being rich, even though George has this beautiful house, George is also an indentured servant because he depends on whites to make money. He doesn't have his own business. He doesn't produce anything. He doesn't have anything in the sense that he can call his own and make money. No, he makes money only as long as he's employed by the white man. Think about it. Very important. You see, you know, George is an investment specialist. One of his clients tells him about military theories. And, you know, as everything begins to collapse, you know, the internet goes out, you know, you can't find around the city. There's strange noises. And then, you know, George remembers that one of the people who he works as an investor for told him about these various strategies, you see. And these strategies included isolation, synchronized chaos, and coup d'etat. It was these, in a sense, 3 steps that could overthrow a government, because it could have people, in a sense, fight among themselves. People, in a sense, would try to destroy themselves. We don't learn this until later, because George is carrying this secret. Because when George meets the Sanfords, he doesn't tell them everything he knows. He doesn't tell them what he's really thinking. And in fact, he really doesn't tell Ruth, you know, his daughter, because the thing is this, is that he's that thoughtful person. He's trying to contemplate. But in a sense, he's also wanted to make sure, you see, because you always got to remember is that as a black person, no matter what job we have, we're always like an outsider. We don't feel that we're really in tune with everything. So we're looking from the outside. So we have to navigate. We have to go through these trials and tribulations. We even have to interpret knowledge, in a sense, in a way in which we allow the flow of the information, the flow of the evidence to tell us what's going on, you see. You know, so we find, in a sense, that we find that the isolation was taking place. And what was the isolation? The isolation was no internet. The isolation was coming from the fact that no telephone service. You know, we all depend on internet and especially that telephone. I know I try not to. And I used to talk about my wife, but I mean, as soon as I stop, I'm looking at that phone. When I wake up in the morning, the phone wakes me up. I'm looking at the phone. Nah. So without the phone and the internet, it makes you feel isolated, you see. We also saw synchronized chaos, and the synchronized chaos came from the noises, but they also were sending out these various flyers. You see, in this particular flyer that Clay had found, it was written in Arabic. But when they went to George's friend, who was a survivalist, he said that his friend had told him that in California they had dropped flyers that was in Korean and Chinese. See, So again, we see that there was synchronized chaos, that these people who were, whoever it was that was trying to destroy the country, whoever it was who was trying to kill them, they in a sense was going off this plan, you see. And then in the end, we finally see that there was a coup d'etat. And we find in a sense that there was a bombing of the city. So we find that these three things, that this arm dealer or this person who George worked for was being played, because see, George had always feared this type of, in a sense, insurrection. He'd always feared this type of war, because this was a war in which you destroy yourself. You destroy yourself because you feel isolated. You feel everything is in chaos. And so then you leave yourself open for the final straw, which is what? A coup d'etat. But let's look at this. You see, the movie also made clear that there was hope. You see, Rosie was the daughter of Clay and Amanda. She was 13 years old. But see, Rosie, she represented the future, you know. And so her character was telling that Rosie, you know, the future is for the young. Her character represents a possible reality that one day racism and white supremacy will end. You know, that may be true. It may be, but let's look at I think it was the Black Authority. He did a show a couple of weeks ago about these games online. He was talking about the auto game in which the people are thieves. You know, my grandson, you know, he's on the air, and these young white people always calling him nigger that. So I don't know if we can really believe that youth are, in a sense, that youth really represent, you know, the possibility of change in the future. I think that this is one of the things that really upset a lot of Black people when they look at Leave the World Behind, is because you want to believe that everything is straight. You want to believe that the future is going to be good. You want to believe that everybody's going to come together. You want to believe that there's hope. But it's hard to believe this because of the fact that we know that it seems as though white supremacy, this whole idea that whites feel that they're superior to us, is ingrained in society. And in fact, when we really serious look at Leave the World Behind, we see the racism and white supremacy even in that movie, you see. But see, much of the film is related to FBA history. For example, the broadcast on the radio. Look at that date. 1619. What was 1619? Wow. 1619. That was when they brought the first Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, to Americas. The next thing, the family was going to Point Comfort. The place sub-Saharan people were made into service in 1619. Yes. The place where the first sub-Saharan Africans were landed was called Point Comfort. Yes. 1619. Those Africans, they came, in a sense, to Virginia. They were landed at Point Comfort. Whoa! The next thing we see, early in the film, we see Rosie. We see that she begins to see this ship coming. And the ship runs aground. It comes out of the ocean, up onto the beach. And what's the name of the ship? The name of the ship is what? White Lion. Have I heard that name before? White Lion. Oh, yes. White Lion was the name of the pirate ship that took the Africans to the USA. Remember the English pirates? They attacked another ship, and they were able to steal these Africans. What do we see? 1619. When the first Africans landed here. Point Comfort, where they were settled. And then the White Lion. Look at it. Yes. Do you see how this show is starting to line under all of it? They're talking about you, Black people, foundational Black Americans, you, me, us. Because see, in late August 1619, 20 to 30 enslaved Africans landed at Point Comfort, today's Fort Monroe in Hampton, Virginia. And they came aboard the White Lion. Yes. Yes. Do you see? Do you see the subtle thing? Are you beginning to see why many black people, they looked at the film, and when they looked at Leave the World Behind, something they felt was missing. They couldn't really say it. And the reason that you couldn't really say it is that you didn't know that that film was aimed at you. Let's contrast. Let's look at the contrast between the evolution of George from an indentured servant to a rich person. You see, here we see George, the great indentured servant. He's got on his tuxedo. He's got his daughter has on a nice, beautiful dress. But they're compared, in a sense, to the average white man and white woman. They've got just on regular clothes. Maybe they're about to go to sleep and things like this. But you look at that contrast, you see? But even though we see this contrast between the rich brother and the average white family, it's still a contrast in which we see what? The darkness. You see, the dark is behind the brother. The white couple is in the light. It's always this dark and white contrast. Let's look at this. To understand this whole idea of George feeling that he was an indentured servant, and George recognizing the fact that he wasn't on the same level of even these average white people who was living in his house. He owned the house. But what happened, This was evident when Ruth questioned her father after Amanda and her family had left the residence in an attempt to return to the city. You see? Yes. See, they decided that they were going to leave the house. When they first got there, George said, okay, since they were renting the home, they could go upstairs. And he gave them back $1,000. And but the next day, as Amanda and Clay became more suspicious, they decided to leave the house, but they came back to the house. They had left. There was no longer any contractual relationship between George, between the Scotts and the Sanfords. And yet Ruth asked him, hey, why are we still sleeping in the basement? Ruth was saying, why are we continuing to sleep in the basement when that's their own house? Do you see that? Do you see that thing? See? Do you see this whole idea that they were sleeping in the basement? They was allowing some average white strangers to be in the beautiful bedrooms upstairs, you see? But what does this do? This implied that even if a black man became rich, he still could consider himself as a servant to the white man. Yes, yes, yes. George, even though he was rich, even though he owned such a beautiful house, even though he had a beautiful car, he still felt inferior to the average white person. He's letting people sleep upstairs in the rooms, and he's sleeping in the basement of his own house. Do you see? Look at this. Look at what they're telling you, see? See? Subconsciously, they're saying that black man, you stay in your place. We are superior to you. You see? Then we find, remember Clay? The next morning, after they move in, the next morning, Clay decides he's going to, in a sense, try to find the town. He gets lost. And while he's driving around, Clay passes a place called Tanny Farms. You see? Tanny Farms. But this Tanny Farms, it represents the judge that said blacks are not American citizens. Yes. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney of the Supreme Court, he said that black people had no rights. We were not citizens. There we go. More blackness in it. But what do? You see? During the George Floyd uprising, his statue was removed in Maryland. Yes, yes, yes. Roger Taney's statue removed from Maryland State House. Wow. Wait a minute, you see? What are they trying to tell us in the story? You see, that even though we're black, even though we can become rich, even though we can have the finest home, even though we can have a great car, we're still not recognized as equal. We're still not recognized as full citizens. And yet, during the George Floyd uprising, we began to remove many of those statues. See? You know, there's a struggle. There's a struggle between man and nature. And it's the myth of the domination of nature by Europeans. Because you remember, the European teaches that he dominates the world. The European teaches you that he's made everything possible. European teaches that he has control over everything. But we keep seeing these deer come up. And we see these deer come up, and everybody's afraid of the deer except for Rosie, because Rosie represents youth. Rosie represents the feelings that young people will challenge, and that young people, even though they never listen to, they're going to, in a sense, challenge nature. So what we find, in a sense, is that they go out into the woods, and as Amanda and Ruth are trying to find Rosie, who's left the house, they run into these deer, and these deer are about to attack Ruth. Instead of Ruth, in a sense, being able to protect herself, she cannot protect herself. She goes into complete fear. And then we have what? The white savior. Yes, we have the white savior. We have where, even though these two women didn't trust each other, we find that later, in a sense, they began to be able to relate. But we find that this sister, the young person, the person who should be really the one protecting the old, she's waiting until this old white woman could protect her. Why? Because the film was showing you that no matter how black people are, we're scared. We're scary of white folks, and we're waiting for white folks to save us. Save me. Yes. Leave the world behind is telling you that black people can't do anything on their own. Even though they can have all the money, even though they can have all the riches, they still need the white man to save them. But leave the world behind. Then we look at this other situation. George, we find, in a sense, that Clay's son, for some reason, after an attack of these sounds, the next day he's bitten by a tick or the sound. But the next day his teeth are coming out. Because his teeth are coming out, then George tells Clay, let's go to this survivalist. There's a white survivalist he knows. And he says, let's go to this white survivalist, and this white survivalist may have some medicine. Because we got to get some medicine for your son, Massa. We got to get some, oh, I'm sorry, he didn't say Massa. But he said, we got to get some medicine for your son. But let's look at this, you see. Okay, George takes Clay to a survivalist friend to get medicine. At first, the man refused to give Clay medicine. And what do GH do? What do George do? He's prepared to kill his friend. He's prepared to kill the survivalist just off of what a white man he just met. He just met Clay. He's been knowing this other man for years, but he's ready to fight and die to protect this white man and to get this white man, in a sense, his medicine for his child. Do you see? Do you see why I said that in the movie they wanted you to continually see that black people are scary, and when black people aren't scary, rather than defend themselves, they'll defend the white man, they'll defend the white woman, they'll defend anything white. Yes. Leave the world behind is deep, but it's talking to you. It began with the fact that we came in slaves in 1619. They brought us on a ship. And that today, 300 years later, we're still slaves. It kind of goes with what Nellie Fuller say, that we're still prisoners of war, but we're still slaves. And we're still waiting, in a sense, to be subservient to the white master. And see, leave the world behind. Yes, in a way it does present black people, a rich black man. They do present a person who's in power, a person who's powerful. But even though he's supposed to be in power, we see that in his consciousness, in his mind, he's suffering from CAIDS. He's suffering from CAIDS, culturally acquired immune identity deficiency syndrome. in the sense that he really does not respect himself. He really doesn't see himself as an independent person. He doesn't see himself as a strong person. He doesn't see himself as an equal to white people, even the average white person. He still sees himself as someone who should cater to the European, someone who, in a sense, should protect his master, even though this guy was just someone he met. Do you see it? This is almost the same as some black people, even though there's no white people around them in their home, they're afraid to talk about Europeans because of the fact that, in a sense, they feel that the white godfather is looking at them. You see? Think about it. In summary, Leave the World Behind is a movie about hope, but also white supremacy. It is a tale that chronicles the history of foundational Black Americans who have suffered abuse and racism at the hands of the white man. It also suggests that although foundational Black Americans are free today, many of us continue to suffer from CAIDS, culturally acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or culturally acquired immune identity deficiency syndrome. And we see ourselves as servants to the whites who continue to hold us as prisoners of war. Yes, yes, yes. That's why we go back to that, in a sense, that picture. You see? Look at that top picture on the left-hand side as we see the white people in light and the black couple in darkness. That's what they're saying, that we're in darkness because we continue not to be able, in a sense, to have the self-respect, not to have, in a sense, the ideas that we're just as good as the European, but they weren't just as good as white folks. They were better than the white folks. But even though they were better than the white folks, we find, in a sense, that they had given up on themselves, that they were allowing themselves, you see, to be hurt and to be used. Yes, Leave the World Behind. It's about a cyber attack. It's a psychological drama, but it's also about Black history. It's also about the fight and the war between the Black and the white man. And yet it's also implying the fact and the idea that many Black people, sadly, many Black people have lost the ability to know who and what they are. They've lost the ability to be able to fully and sincerely respect themselves. And because of the fact that they've lost the ability to fully accept and respect themselves, we continue to be their indentured servants. Even though we came in 1619, even though we've had the civil rights movement, even though we've had lots and lots and lots of things that show we're just as equal or even better, many of us sadly suffer from CAIDS. And because we suffer from CAIDS, we can't help ourselves, you know. Again, how you doing, R3D Sigma, TW? What's up? Chapaka Haru, Jetims, how you doing? Sylvia Stewart, what's up? You know, this is a good point. You see, R3 Sigma, you know, they're saying what? Learning symbolism helps you decode movies and much more. Yes, yes. When you look at the symbolism, when you look at the images that they're trying to present, you're able to be able, in a sense, to know what's going on. You see? It seems like an innocent movie. But when you start to look at how the Black people, the Black couple is presented, the white couple presented, the white couple, in a sense, every time they show white people, they're in blue. You know, blue represents what? The sky, the ocean, everything was blue all over the place. It represents life. It represents vitality. It represents, in a sense, control and living. But whenever we see, in a sense, the Black couple, we see George, we don't see the light. What we see, in a sense, what we see is darkness. We see that they're in darkness, you know. Here's a great post by TW. Dr. Winters, this announcement was a great example of critical thinking. Thank you, Dr. Winters. No, thank you. Thank you for coming in, TW. Thank you for coming and watching this video. And what I hope you'll do, TW, and the rest of you are watching the film, let other people know about this film. Let other people look at this film. Because, see, haven't you just wondered? Haven't you wondered why? You know, I mean, the other day, they were even, I know that Tariq Nasheed, You know, he had a tap in, and somebody said, look at leave the world behind. Everywhere you go, people saying, look at the world behind. Leave the world behind. They keep telling everybody to look at it, but they don't even know. They don't even know that this thing is talking about you, but it's telling you that you have to move up. You have to begin, in a sense, to realize that you're more in a sense than just, you know, a simple innocent group. That you're first frequency. You're the first people that God created. What do the Bible and the Quran say? The Bible and the Quran talk about Adamu. And when they talk about Adamu, what do they say? They say that he was black, he was dark, just like you, just like me, just like us. Demetrius Shepard, how you doing? Margot Dixon, how you doing? And Dee Foster. Did anyone have any questions about the video? If not, we can just stop. But if you have any questions about this video or anything else, put it in there. Oh. Joan asked a question. What do you think about the satanic symbolism, like the deer and the red door on the black and white checkerboard? Well, that in a sense, those were satanic symbols. But it also had, but red in a sense, and the deer, yeah, that does represent Satan. It does represent the devil. But the black and white checkerboard, on the other hand, that's a little bit more different. The black and white checkerboard historically, what it means is it means knowledge. It means, in a sense, of recognition of the creation of God, because God created black, he created the white, darkness, and that from the darkness came light. So in a sense, the black and white checkerboard, that represents knowledge, but the deer does represent Satan. Here's something else. TW had another interesting comment. And what TW says is that the enemy always tells you what their plans for the future will be. Yes, that's a plan for a future, maybe. We know that if you notice that they're talking about that they'd like to go to war, they'd like to have a war and fight us and all that type of stuff, but that's kind of silly. They're not going to fight you fair. But as you can see, this whole idea of isolating people, of making people, in a sense, not know what's going on, that it can be a good way that people can control you, and that people would maybe be ready to hurt themselves. So, who knows? This may be something that's to inform us. Okay. TW, Dr. Winters, what do you think about the scene of the sexual attraction between the white female and the black male? Well, if you noticed, in a sense, is that even not only between George and Amanda, but we also saw that their son was attracted to Ruth. You see, and this whole idea. Look at the commercials now, and just about all the commercials now, they usually have a black person and a white person, and so they're trying to highlight this whole idea, because he remembers that they're losing out and they're attracted to us. I mean, what is the symbol of beauty? The symbol of handsomeness. What do they say? Tall, dark, and handsome. What did they teach us when I was growing up? They talked about the fact is that a really fine looking woman had a shape like a Coke bottle. They don't have a shape like a Coke bottle. They're not tall, dark, and handsome. So of course, this attraction is just meant to show that even though, but we're still coming back to what? We're still coming back to that slave mentality. We're still coming back to the fact is that Massa, the little boy, the white woman, they all, in a sense, could use a black man or a black woman whenever they got ready. And that's what they were also showing in that, is that they're always sexually attracted to us, but it's always, in a sense, that sexual attraction is not a sexual attraction based upon a full partnership. It's not a sexual attraction based upon equality. It's an attraction based upon the idea that they are superior and that you're inferior. You see? Leave the world behind. It is a movie about white supremacy and black inferiority. Because even though we have this rich black man, he's still allowing white people to control him, to dictate who and what he is. How you doing, Devane? Haley? Okay, Joan. Satanists use the deer head in their rituals. Yes, they do, because see, the deer head is supposed to represent the boar, and yes, it is from ritualistic things. That's one of the reasons why they kept showing the deers as being menacing. You see, they kept showing the deer as something to be afraid of. But if you notice, let's look at this again. If you notice, Rosie, the little white girl, she wasn't afraid of the deer, was she? Also, we find that although Ruth, the black girl, she was afraid of the deers, we find that Amanda was there to protect her, to show that superiority. In other words, in a sense, what they're telling you is that white people, they can deal with the devil. They don't mind dealing with the devil. They don't mind dealing with Satan, because that's not something that they fear, you see? And that's one of the reasons why we find, in a sense, this whole idea throughout the film that the deers, but the white people were not afraid of the deers. But that black girl, Ruth, she was. Okay, Dorville, you say, Dr. Winters, the tick bite is like the blankets with the smallpox. It could be. But remember, in a sense, that's something that is left up for us to decide. Did the tick cause him to lose his teeth? Or was it, in a sense, the radiation? Remember later they said that there was radiation near the cities. Was it the radiation? But if it was the radiation, why didn't it make the other people's teeth fall out? You see? And again, as you said, the blankets were smallpox blankets. That's how they were able to dominate black people. That's how they took over America. In the beginning of their invasion of the Americans, they would always give, in a sense, the Aboriginal Indians smallpox blankets to kill them off. Okay, Dave J.R., you have a pretty good question. You say, have you seen any other film that have a similar undermeaning? I haven't seen one yet, not in years. But this is the first film where they really tried to. But look at the author. Look at the author. I don't know if he was an Indian or an Afro-American. But look at the author. Maybe in a sense, he's talking about what we're always talking about. Those of us who are B1, black first. Often we believe, in a sense, is that many black people who are in influential positions like Oprah Winfrey, Gail, and others, these people, in a sense, they lack a black identity. Because they lack a black identity, they're always subservient. Remember when Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jackson was dead, and she was trying to help some people, sue Michael Jackson, and he was dead. I suppose one of his friends. But that's just how to show, in a sense, how many of our so-called rich, many of our so-called elites, they have a lack of black identity. And this lack of black identity, in a sense, causes them not to be able to really be fully important. In fact, in a sense, Dave, when you ask this question, I really don't think that they knew what they were doing. I really think that when they did this film, they didn't know that this film was really telling the average black person that you can't trust our elites. See, because they want you to believe that our elites will help us. They want you to believe that Jay-Z and some of the other people that they're really down with the cause. They're down with black people. But we know Oprah, Jay-Z, and the rest of them, they're about themselves. And whenever they're around Europeans, they're ready to boost up Europeans instead of boost up our people. You see, that's why I know, Dave, I've never seen another film like this. And I don't think they knew what they were doing when they made this film. Okay. TW, oh, you're thinking, you're thoughtful. TW says, remind me of the Twilight Zone episode. The monsters are due on Maple Street. The theme was people will destroy themselves if you throw a wrench in the works. Yes, it was in the way it is, but it's more than that because see, in this film, they also not only talked about in a sense this whole idea of Europeans being ready to fight and having to be prepared about these monsters, but it also had that underlying causes that if there is going to be a problem in the future, we have to get our slaves. Do you get it? We have to have our slaves ready so our slaves can be there to take care of us. Our slaves can be there to protect us, you see. And that's why they had to bring in Scott and his daughter. Because see, Scott and his daughter, by the simple fact that George didn't even have the nerve to even tell those people, you sleep in the basement, I'm going up to my own bedroom, shows how subservient that George was, and showing how these people in a sense had no militancy in them at all. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. The author was born in the USA. His parents immigrated from Bangladesh. That's very interesting because you know Bangladesh, they had a big thing out there back in the 70s when the Indians were trying to mainly massacre a lot of them and didn't want them to be free. So this is interesting. Okay, Darlene X, she said, I think most of us already know that if the ish hits the fan, they are not going to help us in any way. Maybe in a sense we do know this, but that film was saying that. So what if you know that? What it was also saying is that the European, remember, the Spanish tried to start a civilization here in 1526. The Africans, the Aboriginals, and the Africans rebelled, and the Spanish couldn't form a civilization. They cannot form a civilization. The only successful civilization in the Americas was only founded when they were able to get Black people to help them build this country. And that's what they're saying. They're saying is that even if there's a future Holocaust, even if there's future destruction of America, they're still going to need their slaves. Get it? They're still going to need Black people to help them survive. And that's what this was all about. See, that even though that Black person may be rich, they're still going to be subservient to the European. Deep, isn't it? What about the Hispanic women on the roadside? That's just was to show. That was just to show, in a sense, that we have a lack of communication. You see, that's also to show. Remember, in Chicago, they're trying to bring immigrants to replace us, and so then, yes, they're trying to bring immigrants to replace us. But what they were trying to show in this movie, is that the immigrants are okay. They're good servants, but if you want to get the best servant, you want to have some Black people. Get it? George, Ruth were going to be their servants. Here's something that's very interesting. Deborah Smith, she says, losing teeth could be symbolic for lack of wisdom from a spiritual perspective. Maybe that could be it. You might have a point there because Deborah, that's one of the good things about the book is that I heard that the book really wants to make you think about things. So that could have been what it was trying to imply. Is that this whole idea of losing teeth shows, in a sense, a lack of being able, in a sense, to be able to have that wisdom and knowledge. I think you might be right. Here's an interesting quote. TW is saying, knowing the plans of the enemy is to our advantage. I want the whites to keep making movies. You got a point there. You see, maybe it's always good. Listen, intelligence, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Ah, oh, wow. Here's an even more interesting thing. R3D Sigma, he says, Deborah, could it also represent weakness and fragility? What about that? That by the teeth falling out, the teeth could also not only represent a lack of wisdom, it could also, in a sense represent fragility. Look at this. Now look at this. You know, you have really thought of something, because see, in this film, in this movie, they made Clay, Amanda's husband, seem dumb. He was dumb. Remember, he was dumb. He's easy to give up, and he lacked any sense of being of leadership. He lacked any sense of leadership, right? Remember? And so the son, he also, in a sense, by his teeth coming out, oh yeah, he wanted to have sex. He was very, in a sense, sexual in relationship to wanting the black girl. But at the same time, his teeth falling out was showing, like you said, the fragility, the weakness. And so we find that according to this movie, they were trying to say that the white male is very weak. Interesting, you see, and that the dominant person in the relationship was who? Amanda. Yeah, you're very observant. Sigma, you are R3D Sigma. You are very observant. I think that makes. I have to agree. With Joan. And what did Joan say? Yes, that makes sense. Yes, it makes sense. It makes sense. You know that's the one thing that I loved about the movie, is that the movie will make you think. It will make you think about things, and it's very interesting, because it makes you try to understand what's going on and move it to a certain level, a certain perspective. But anyway, we've been here for an hour. I don't want to make the video too long. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Thank you. I hope you'll catch me on the next live. I only thought about making this live tonight, but there's so many people out there trying to look up the movie. So many people want to see Leave the World Behind. I just want to let the family understand is that there's more to this film than just, a coup d'etat. It's more to this film than just, in a sense, trying to tell you and warn you about what the future can present. This film was also trying to imply that, Negro, you stay in your place. I am superior, and I will always be superior. And that you will be inferior to me. So when they say leave the world behind, they're lying. They didn't want to leave the world behind. They wanted to go into the future, but they wanted to have their black slaves, because it's only through us, foundational Black Americans, that white people can really be free. Thanks, everybody. See you on my next live stream.